Hi, and welcome to the Columbus, Ohio Real Estate News Show. I'm Ryan Dieter with Key Realty, and in this show, I want to bring you up to speed on what's going on in the Columbus, Ohio real estate market, but also just headlines and news stories that I find that are relevant to Columbus, Ohio, and will impact the real estate market. So, if you find this information useful, please subscribe to this. And in fact, we're launching a podcast. So, if you're listening to the podcast, this will be episode 1, to where we're going to allow you to listen to this more on the go. And so thanks for tuning in if you are on the podcast version, and if you're on YouTube, thanks for tuning in as well. But like, subscribe, and share this as well if you find this information useful for somebody who might be interested. So I'm starting this at a very interesting time, as we are now a week out of the election at the time of recording this. So the dust has settled a little bit. We all know the results, and obviously Trump has won. In Ohio particularly, we have even a more red state than we have in the past. So now we have two Republican senators. Obviously, one's going to be the vice president in Vance, and the governor will then pick his replacement for the next 2 years until the next election. But with that, it will most likely, I'm 100% positive, it's going to be a Republican in his place. So we have a red state. We have mostly House representatives are over 50% Republicans, or 50% more Republicans than Democrats. The House Supreme Court, I think, is 6-1 now when it comes to Republicans versus Democrats. And so it's a very, very red state now. So I want to kind of just recap on what's going on and how that impacts Ohio. And obviously we're going to start at the top with the president election. And Trump policies have tended to be, in the past, we saw that he is someone who likes to take on debt and raise the debt to boost the economy. So, whether you like that or not, it's kind of that trickle down effect where we, cut taxes for big businesses and, the wealthier side of things, that people that have money, so they will help, allow people to spend more money on the economy. And that's kind of what the prediction is seeing, what we're predicting is going to happen again. As we saw, the stock market took a big jump once he was elected, and continues to rise because of those policies where he tends to pump money into these large companies that are on the stock market, and makes it easier for them to borrow and get money and just do well. Essentially, his policies tend to favor those companies. So that's why we saw the rise in the stock market. And a lot of those companies are tied to people that have joined his ranks. Also, that bodes well for them, so they assume that their companies are going to do better. With that said, we also know that the debt has taking on more debt also has other factors, and the bond market took a hit because of that, which is directly tied into interest rates. So what we saw is the stock market going up, but the interest, the bond market took a hit, and the interest rates kind of took a little shock afterwards, and so that tends to have a negative reaction to the interest rate. So one thing that I kind of predict is that we will see, bigger businesses invest more in the economy, but we'll also still see rates kind of slowly come down. I say slowly come down because they were already on the direction of coming down. The Federal Reserve has met the last 6 months really, and has said they've already made one rate cut, and they actually met they met the week after the election, that Thursday, with their already scheduled meeting. That wasn't anything to do with the election. They were already scheduled to meet, and they dropped it again. They dropped it by 0.25%. The previous meeting, they dropped it by 0.5%. Now, everyone thought that the 0.5% was going to drastically lower rates for everybody really quick, because we saw rates go up really quick during the 2001 to 2022 year. And so people expected them to come down just as quick, it seems like. And that's not how it works typically. So I think we're going to see a slow rate drop. Whoever won presidency, I think we're going to see that. I think whoever won was going to inherit a lower rate environment. And so with Trump's policies of kind of boosting the bigger companies in the stock market, and the rates coming down some, is going to allow those companies to again start investing heavily into infrastructure. In the last few years, we really saw the Wall Street investors, when it comes to home buying, dry up. I mean, I've not seen any of those big investors. It's been a lot of local mom and pop investors that are investing in Columbus here particularly. And so we saw that dry up, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. And we saw local investors that, finding ways to still make things work. But it's, as we all know, the market, and when it comes to investing in real estate, has been a lot tighter. The numbers have been tighter. There's just been a harder market to invest in, particularly, one, because of the rate environment and prices going up, but two, just there's just less on the market right now as well. So one thing that I do think will happen is, now that the president election is behind us, so a lot of people were just waiting. They were waiting to see what happened. Both parties made a lot of promises, and we all know that a lot of that's smoke on both sides. I know Kamala was predicting that, or not predicting, but promising, a $25,000 grant for first-time home buyers. And so a lot of people, if you're a first-time home buyer, why wouldn't you wait, 6 more months to see if that, is going to come true? To get $25,000, that's no, that's a big chunk of change. So I think that's, stuff like that was going around where people were promising things. People were just like, well, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And it happens to be the fall season, especially here in Columbus. That's the slow cycle where we start seeing things go down. So I think a lot of people just saw the market slowing down, a presidential election, and a lot of confusion. And we also saw the rate environment where the rates were supposedly coming down, but they weren't really down that much yet, where a lot of people are just in that wait and see mode in the last few months. And I think that's going to start breaking away a little bit. I think people are going to say, okay, we're now confident that we know kind of whether you wanted it or not, we know the future a little bit. And so now we can make plans to move forward. And we're going to see a little bit more inventory hit the market. We're going to see buyers enter the market. And so I think we're just going to see some more movement, whether I think on both ends, both supply and demand side. I still think it's going to be a competitive market here in Columbus. I don't see things leaning, I think it's going to kind of be both sides, the supply side and the demand side, rising up and just more transactions taking place. I still think it's going to be a very similar environment where good homes are selling quick, as we're seeing today, and homes that need work and are a little bit priced high based on the work that needs done is something we're going to see those houses sit in the market. So what we're also finding out is just the cost of labor and the cost of repairs are still really high. And so I think a lot of people are realizing that when they think about buying a house that needs a lot of work. People are realizing, that it costs a lot more than it did 5 years ago to do the work, to have someone do it. So that impacts the price of homes, especially the ones that need work. So we're seeing homes that need work sit in the market a lot longer, and the homes that don't, that check all the boxes for most buyers are still flying off the shelf in the first weekend or so. So that's kind of the overall picture of the market right now, where I see the presidential election having an impact, but mostly because it's over, mostly because people now, it's not necessarily the one person and whoever won was going to make a huge difference in the market. I think either way, it was going to kind of continue this direction. I think it's just a breath, people are exhaling in a sense of saying, okay, well, however you wanted to win, it happened, and now we can just make our plans moving forward either way. So with that said, now I do think, going down the ballot, we're going to see, policies that are traditionally Republican policies, and kind of less regulations, more pro-business, big, money putting into, whether it's tax breaks for companies and stuff like that, come to just be easier to get passed. And so that's kind of the landscape we're going to see the next, 2 to 4 years, as we are now, and I think well beyond that in Ohio, because that's kind of the landscape we're in here in Ohio. But yeah, obviously Columbus particularly is still a blue city. As we've seen in Ohio, you have the 3 major cities that are still strongly blue. And so the cities are going to have their own little policies as well. The more rural areas or smaller cities are going to have more Republican policies. So one of the projects I do want to touch on is the Intel project here in Columbus. I know there's been a lot of hype on the Intel project for Columbus itself. This project broke ground a couple years ago now, and was announced during the 2020 pandemic, and with the rush of real estate during that time alone, really accelerated the growth of Columbus and appreciation here. And so it's obviously been a big deal in Columbus, but Intel has had some rocky few months here, and I know that their earnings was Q3 earnings was much lower than expected, and they announced over $1 billion loss in the company. They're laying off about 10 to 15% of their employees, trying to save money. And I know side of things. So There's been a setback of a couple years from when they think they can start opening some of the space. Obviously, it was slated to be a 10-year project as a whole, but they thought it would open in phases, and that first phase has been pushed back already. So this may be an even longer phase, and just figuring out technology as a whole. I know Intel has struggled to keep up with some of the technology that some of their counterparts are producing. So with that said, there's been some rocky starts, and then President Trump has been very critical of this project as a whole, mainly because it's a bipartisan, project that was led by the Democrat president, and so he's going to be critical of any project that actually got passed and accomplished during that presidency. So will we see him make a difference, or will we see him, pull out of this project? It's hard to say. I'm not sure how much power he has to do that. That's one thing I really don't know. I know Bernie Moreno, after he won his Senate election, was interviewed about this project. Been getting a lot of questions about this, and he, from what I understand, he said that he's not, he's hopeful that the project will move forward, and that doesn't think Trump will, end this project by any means. And I also know Governor DeWine did a press conference a week before election trying to get Biden to release these funds, the funds to Intel, because I don't think Intel's even seen the government funds passed by the CHIPS Act that allocates billions of dollars to Intel to help build this project here in Ohio. So I know he's asking for more money, at least to get the money out prior to Trump taking office as well. So there may be a reason for that. I don't really know, but we will see how that fares once President Trump gets in office. Last of it, I want to end this on something exciting, or that I'm excited about here in Columbus taking place in the real estate market, or just stuff coming to Columbus. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is something happened in my backyard. I live in Clintonville, and there's a new bookstore opening up in Clintonville. So I'm really excited about that, called Clintonville Books. Shout out to Grant, who's getting that project running here, and it should be open here in December, so very soon. But it's going to be a great collection of new, used, and kids' books as well. So check that out and keep that on your radar here as the holiday season's approaching. It's a great place to find some gifts for those who like to read. Excited about that project and being close to my home. And thanks for tuning in. So if this is the first time you've tuned in, please subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to hear about, questions you may have about the real estate market. Love to answer those. If you want to have an individual conversation, I am always happy to do that as well. Please feel free to reach out. I'm not hard to find. You can easily Google me and find my contact information. But of course, if I will continue to do these episodes once or twice a month to keep you informed on what is going on in the real estate market here in Columbus, Ohio. So stay tuned.